The ship landed on the white stone platform with a soft hum. The doors opened slowly, and Taiwu stepped out into the light of 3 suns. He had to cover his eyes for a moment. The brightness was too much. When his vision cleared, he saw the Valaran Imperial Palace for the first time. It was massive. The towers reached so high that clouds wrapped around them like white ribbons. The walls were made of a strange blue crystal that seemed to glow from within. Everything looked clean and perfect. Taiwu felt small standing there in his simple gray uniform. He was a human. The first human to ever serve in the Imperial Palace of Valora. Back on Earth, they told him this was an honor. They said he would represent all of humanity. They said he should be proud. But standing here now, looking at the alien guards who watched him with cold eyes, Taiwu did not feel proud. He felt like a mouse that had walked into a room full of cats. A tall figure approached him. The alien was at least 7 feet tall with pale blue skin and silver hair that flowed like water down his back. His eyes were completely white with no pupils at all. He wore armor made of the same crystal as the palace walls. "You are the human," the alien said. His voice was flat. There was no welcome in it. "Yes," Taiwu replied. "I am Taiwu. I was sent by the Earth Council to serve in the Royal Guard." The tall alien looked at him for a long moment. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was not a friendly sound. "A human in the Royal Guard," the alien said slowly. "The universe has become strange indeed." Other guards began to gather around. They all looked similar to the first one. Tall, blue-skinned, with those strange white eyes. They whispered to each other in their own language. Taiwu could not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. They were making fun of him. One of the guards stepped forward. He was younger than the others, and there was cruelty in his face. "How did they choose you, human?" he asked. "Were you the strongest of your kind? The fastest? The smartest?" Taiwu stood straight. "I was chosen because I was willing to come." The guards laughed. It was an ugly sound that echoed across the landing platform. "Willing," the young guard repeated. "That is all? On Valora, our warriors train for 50 years before they are allowed to guard the palace. 50 years of combat, of discipline, of pain. And you were simply willing." Taiwu said nothing. There was nothing to say. He knew he was not like them. He knew humans were considered weak by most species in the galaxy. Their bodies were soft. Their lives were short. They had no natural weapons, no special abilities. In a universe filled with powerful aliens, humans were nothing special. But Taiwu had learned long ago that there was more than one kind of strength. "Come," the tall alien said. "I will take you to your quarters. Try not to get lost. The palace is large, and we do not have time to search for wandering humans." Taiwu followed him through massive doors and into the palace. The inside was even more beautiful than the outside. The floors were made of smooth white stone. The walls were covered with paintings and carvings that told stories he did not understand. Everything was big. The ceilings were so high that birds flew inside the halls. Real birds with bright feathers and long tails. They walked for a long time. Taiwu tried to remember the path, but it was impossible. The palace was like a maze. Left, right, upstairs, downstairs, through doors and arches and bridges that crossed over indoor gardens. His legs began to ache, but he did not complain. He would not give them the satisfaction. Finally, they reached a small door at the end of a narrow hallway. The tall alien pointed at it. "Your room," he said. "You will stay here when you are not on duty. Food will be brought to you. Do not wander the palace at night. Do not speak to the noble families unless they speak to you first. Do not enter the royal chambers without permission." "I understand," Taiwu said. The alien turned to leave, then stopped. He looked back at Taiwu with those empty white eyes. One more thing, human. You have been assigned to guard Princess Yuna. She is the only heir to the throne, the most important person in the Empire. If anything happens to her while you are on duty, your death will be slow and painful. Do you understand? Taiwu nodded. I understand. The alien walked away without another word. Taiwu watched him go, then opened the door to his room. It was small. There was a bed, a table, and a window that looked out at nothing but stone walls. Compared to the rest of the palace, it was like a closet, but Taiwu did not mind. He had slept in worse places. He sat on the bed and took a deep breath. His first day on Valora was almost over, and he had already been insulted, mocked, and threatened. Not a great start, but he had expected this. Everyone had warned him that aliens did not respect humans. They saw humans as weak creatures from a small planet in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. What they did not know was that humans had survived worse than insults. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars that nearly destroyed their entire world. They had clawed their way up from the dirt and reached the stars through pure determination. Humans were not strong or fast or powerful, but they were stubborn. They did not give up, ever. Taiwu lay down on the bed and closed his eyes. Tomorrow, he would meet the princess. Tomorrow, his real work would begin. He slept well that night. The next morning, a servant came to his door. The servant was small and nervous, with green skin and 4 arms. She handed Taiwu a uniform made of fine cloth and told him to put it on. The uniform was white with gold edges. It looked expensive. The princess will see you in 1 hour, the servant said. Please be ready. Taiwu put on the uniform. It fit perfectly. He looked at himself in the small mirror on the wall. He did not look like a royal guard. He looked like a human playing dress-up. But it would have to do when the hour passed. Another guard came to take him to the princess. This guard was different from the others. She was female, with the same blue skin but softer features. She did not speak to Taiwu as they walked through the palace, but she also did not mock him. That was something. They arrived at a large door covered in gold designs. The guard knocked 3 times, and a voice from inside said to enter. The room was enormous. It was filled with light from tall windows that reached from floor to ceiling. There were plants everywhere, and the air smelled like flowers. In the center of the room was a pool of clear water, and sitting beside the pool was a young woman, Princess Yuna. She was beautiful in a way that was hard to describe. Her skin was pale blue like the others, but it seemed to glow with inner light. Her hair was white and long, falling past her shoulders like fresh snow. Her eyes were different from the other Valorans. They were not empty and white. They were silver, like mirrors, and when she looked at Taiwu, he felt like she could see into his soul. She did not stand up. She did not smile. She simply watched him with those silver eyes. So you are the human, she said. Her voice was soft and clear, like water flowing over stones. Taiwu bowed. Yes, Your Highness. I am Taiwu. I have been assigned to protect you. The princess tilted her head slightly. Protect me? You are small. You are weak. Your species lives for less than 100 years. How will you protect me? It was the same question everyone had asked. Taiwu gave the same answer he always gave. I will do whatever it takes, Your Highness. I will give everything I have. The princess was silent for a long moment. Then something changed in her eyes. It was small, barely noticeable, but Taiwu saw it. It was curiosity. Everyone in this palace thinks humans are worthless, she said. They laugh at you behind your back. They think I am being punished by having a human guard. What do you say to that? Taiwu met her silver eyes without fear. I say that I am not here to change their minds, Your Highness. I am here to do my duty. If they want to laugh, let them laugh. I have heard worse." The princess stood up slowly. She was tall, almost as tall as Tai Wu, and she moved with grace that seemed almost unnatural. She walked toward him until she was close enough to touch. "You are different from what I expected," she said quietly. "Most beings become angry when they are insulted. They want to prove themselves. They want respect. But you do not seem to care." "I care about doing my job, Your Highness. That is all." The princess studied him for another long moment. Then she did something that surprised him. She smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it was real. "Perhaps having a human guard will be more interesting than I thought," she said. "Very well, Tai Wu. You will start your duties today. Stay close to me. Watch everything. Trust no one." Tai Wu bowed again. "Yes, Your Highness." As he followed the princess out of the room, he did not notice the eyes watching from the shadows. He did not see the hooded figure standing in a dark corner, hidden behind a curtain of flowers. He did not know that someone had been listening to every word, but the princess knew. She always knew, and that was why she had smiled. Because for the first time in a long time, she had found someone who might actually be useful. Someone who had nothing to gain from betraying her. Someone who would be loyal because loyalty was all he had. The human did not know it yet, but he had already passed the first test. The shadows in the palace were growing darker. Enemies were moving in places that could not be seen. War was coming, and blood would be spilled before it was over. But for now, Tai Wu walked beside the princess through the bright halls of the palace, and he did not feel small anymore. He felt ready. Whatever came next, he would face 3 weeks past. Tai Wu learned the palace slowly, piece by piece. He memorized the hallways and the doors. He learned which paths were safe and which ones were dark and empty. He watched the servants and the guards. He noticed things that others did not notice. The princess kept him close, as she had promised. Every day, he followed her through her duties. She attended meetings with advisors. She received visitors from distant planets. She studied ancient texts in the Great Library. She trained with weapons in the combat hall. Through all of it, Tai Wu stayed 3 steps behind her, silent and watchful. The other guards still mocked him. They called him names in their language, thinking he could not understand. But Tai Wu had been learning Valoran in secret. Every night, he studied the language until his eyes burned. Now he understood most of what they said. They called him Shadow Walker, because he was always following the princess like a shadow. They called him Soft Skin, because human flesh was weak compared to Valoran hide. They called him Short Life, because humans died so quickly compared to species that lived for thousands of years. Tai Wu did not react to any of it. He had a job to do. Words could not hurt him. One evening, the princess called him to her private chambers. It was the first time she had spoken to him directly since his first day. He entered the room and found her sitting by the window, looking out at the 3 moons that hung in the purple sky. "Close the door," she said without turning around. Tai Wu closed the door and waited. The princess was silent for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, softer, sadder. "Do you know why I accepted a human guard, Tai Wu?" "No, Your Highness." She turned to look at him. In the moonlight, her silver eyes looked almost blue. "Because I cannot trust anyone else." Tai Wu did not understand. "Your Highness, the palace is filled with guards. Hundreds of warriors who have trained their whole lives to protect you." "Yes," the princess said. "And any one of them could be a traitor." The word hung in the air like smoke. Traitor. "There are people in this palace who want me dead," the princess continued. "Powerful people. People with money and influence and secrets. I do not know who they are. I do not know when they will strike, but I know they are coming. Taiwu felt his heart beat faster. Have you told the royal advisors? The princess laughed, but it was not a happy sound. The royal advisors might be part of it. My father is sick. He's been sick for years. When he dies, I will become empress. But there are others who want the throne. Cousins, uncles, old families who believe they have more right to rule than I do. Any of them could be planning to kill me. Why are you telling me this? Taiwu asked. The princess stood and walked toward him. She stopped just a few feet away. Because you have nothing, Taiwu. No power, no connections, no reason to betray me. You are a human from a distant planet with no stake in Valoran politics. If you wanted me dead, you would gain nothing. That makes you the only person I can trust. Taiwu understood now. He was safe because he was worthless. It was a strange kind of compliment. I will protect you, Your Highness, he said. No matter what. The princess nodded slowly. I believe you, but protecting me will not be easy. The enemies are smart. They have been planning for years. They will strike when I least expect it, in a way I cannot predict. You must watch everything. Trust no one. Question everything you see. I will. The princess returned to her seat by the window. You may go now. But remember what I told you. The shadows are moving, Taiwu. We must be ready when they come. Taiwu bowed and left the room. His mind was racing. He had suspected that something was wrong in the palace. He had felt it in the air, in the way people looked at each other, in the whispered conversations that stopped when he walked by. But now he knew for certain. Someone wanted the princess dead. And he was the only one standing between her and the darkness. From that night on, Taiwu watched everything more carefully. He noticed the servants who lingered too long near the princess's doors. He noticed the guards who looked away when they should have been watching. He noticed the advisors who smiled too much and the nobles who smiled too little. Most of all, he noticed a man named Dong Yun. Dong Yun was the head of the household servants. He was old, with gray hair and wrinkled blue skin. He walked with a limp and spoke in a gentle voice. Everyone in the palace trusted him. He had served the royal family for over 300 years, but Taiwu did not trust him. It was small things at first. The way Dong Yun's eyes moved when he thought no one was watching. The way he always seemed to know where the princess would be, even before she decided. The way certain servants only took orders from him, never from anyone else. Taiwu began to follow Dong Yun at night. He moved through the dark hallways like a ghost, staying in the shadows, making no sound. The old servant went to strange places at strange hours. He visited parts of the palace that had no reason to be visited. He spoke with people in whispers, always in corners where the light did not reach. One night, Taiwu followed Dong Yun to the lower levels of the palace. These were the old parts, the places that had been built thousands of years ago when the empire was young. The walls were cracked and the lights were dim. No one came down here anymore. Dong Hyan stopped at a door covered in dust. He looked around carefully, then opened it and stepped inside. Taiwu waited a moment, then crept closer to listen. He heard voices. Dong Yun was not alone. The banquet is in 3 days, another voice said. It was deep and harsh. That is when we strike. Are the assassins ready? Dong Yun asked. 7 of the best. They will enter through the servant passages. No one will see them until it is too late. And the guards? Half of them are ours. The other half will be too slow to react. By the time they understand what is happening, the princess will be dead. Taiwu felt cold. His whole body went tense. He had found them. The traitors. The enemies. And they were going to kill the princess in 3 days. What about the human? Dong Yun asked. He is always near her. The other voice laughed. The human? He is nothing. A weak little creature from a weak little planet. He will die with the rest of them. Taiwu backed away slowly. He had heard enough. He needed to warn the princess. He needed to stop this, but as he turned to leave, his foot hit something in the dark. A piece of metal. It made a small sound, barely louder than a whisper. But in the silence of the lower palace, it was enough. The door opened. Light spilled into the hallway. Dong Yun stood there, his old face twisted with surprise and anger. "The human," he said. "What are you doing here?" Taiwu did not answer. He ran. He ran faster than he had ever run in his life. His lungs burned and his legs ached, but he did not stop. Behind him, he heard shouts and footsteps. They were chasing him. If they caught him, they would kill him. They would kill him, and then they would kill the princess, and no one would ever know the truth. He ran through the dark hallways, turning left and right, trying to remember the path back to the upper palace. The footsteps grew louder. They were getting closer. Then he saw a door. It was small and hidden behind a broken pillar. He did not know where it led, but he had no choice. He pulled it open and threw himself inside. The room was dark and smelled like old dust. Taiwu pressed himself against the wall and tried to control his breathing. Outside, he heard the footsteps pass by. They did not stop. They did not find him. He waited in the darkness for a long time. An hour, maybe 2. When he was sure they were gone, he crept out of the room and found his way back to the upper palace. It was almost morning when he reached the princess's chambers. He knocked on the door, and a servant answered. "I need to see the princess," Taiwu said. "Now, it is urgent." The servant looked at him with confusion. "The princess is sleeping. She cannot be disturbed. Wake her. Tell her that the shadows are moving. She will understand." The servant hesitated, then nodded and disappeared inside. A few minutes later, the door opened and the princess stood there. She was wearing sleeping clothes, and her white hair was messy. But her silver eyes were sharp and alert. "Come in," she said. "Tell me everything." Taiwu told her. He told her about following Dong Yun. He told her about the meeting in the lower palace. He told her about the 7 assassins and the banquet and the plan to kill her in 3 days. When he finished, the princess was silent. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands were shaking slightly. "Dong Yun," she said quietly. "He has served my family for 300 years. My father trusted him completely. He is a traitor, Your Highness." "Yes," the princess closed her eyes. "He is. We should arrest him," Taiwu said. "We should arrest all of them before the banquet." The princess shook her head. "No, if we arrest them now, we will only catch the small ones. The real enemy will escape. They will try again, and next time we will not be warned. Then what do we do?" The princess opened her eyes. There was fire in them now. Cold, silver fire. "We let them come," she said. "We let them think their plan is working. And when they strike, we will be ready. That is dangerous, Your Highness." "Yes, it is. But it is the only way to end this forever." She looked at Taiwu with something that might have been gratitude. "You have done well, Taiwu. You found what no one else could find. You." The day of the banquet arrived like a storm cloud rolling over the mountains. The palace was filled with activity. Servants ran through the hallways carrying flowers and decorations. Cooks prepared food in the great kitchens. Musicians practiced their songs in empty rooms. Everyone was busy. Everyone was excited. Everyone except Taiwu. He stood in the corner of the great hall and watched. The hall was massive, big enough to hold 1,000 people. The ceiling was painted with images of ancient battles and legendary heroes. Giant crystal chandeliers hung from golden chains, filling the room with soft light. Long tables covered with white cloth stretched from one end of the hall to the other. Tonight, the most powerful people in the Valoran Empire would gather here. Nobles and generals and merchants and priests. They would eat and drink and celebrate the coming of spring. They would toast to the health of the emperor and his daughter. And somewhere in the shadows, 7 assassins were waiting. Taiwu had not slept much in the past 3 days. He had spent every moment preparing. He had studied the layout of the Great Hall. He had found every door, every window, every hidden passage. He knew where the servants would enter and where the guards would stand. He knew the fastest routes to the princess and the slowest routes away from danger. He had also prepared his body. He had trained in secret, pushing himself harder than ever before. His muscles ached, and his hands were covered in small cuts from practicing with weapons. But he was ready. As ready as any human could be. The princess had been calm during the past 3 days. She had continued her normal activities as if nothing was wrong. She had smiled at the servants and spoken kindly to the nobles. No one suspected that she knew about the plot. No one knew that she was waiting for the enemy to show themselves. Now, as the afternoon sun began to set, Taiwu went to meet her. He found her in her chambers, being dressed by servants in a beautiful gown of silver and white. Her hair was arranged in an elaborate style with small jewels woven through it. She looked like a goddess from an old story. "Leave us," she told the servants. They bowed and hurried out of the room. When they were alone, the princess looked at Taiwu. Her silver eyes were calm, but he could see the tension beneath the surface. "Tonight is the night," she said. "Yes, Your Highness. Are you afraid?" Taiwu thought about the question. He was standing in an alien palace millions of miles from Earth. In a few hours, 7 trained killers would try to murder the woman he was sworn to protect. Half the guards in the palace were working for the enemy. He was alone, outmatched, and probably going to die. "Yes," he said honestly. "I am afraid." The princess nodded. "Good. Fear keeps us sharp. Fear keeps us alive." She walked closer to him and looked into his eyes. "I want you to know something, Taiwu. Whatever happens tonight, I am grateful for what you have done. You could have ignored what you heard in the lower palace. You could have run away and saved yourself. But you did not. You chose to stay and fight. It is my duty. It is more than that." The princess reached out and placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. "You are a good person. I have watched you these past weeks. You are kind to the servants who mock you. You are patient with the guards who insult you. You do not seek glory or power. You simply do what is right." Taiwu did not know what to say. He felt his face grow warm. "When I become empress," the princess continued, "I will not forget what you have done for me. I promise you that." "Your Highness," Taiwu said quietly, "let us make sure you live long enough to become empress first." The princess smiled. It was a real smile, warm and bright. "Yes, let us do that." The banquet began at sunset. Guests arrived in waves, each one more impressive than the last. Noble families in their finest clothes. Military commanders in armor that shone like mirrors. Merchants dripping with jewels and gold. Priests in white robes with sacred symbols painted on their faces. Taiwu stood behind the princess as she greeted each guest. He watched their faces, looking for signs of danger. Most of them barely noticed him. He was just a human servant, not worth their attention. That was good. The less they noticed him, the more he could see. He saw Dong Yun moving through the crowd, speaking to servants in whispers. The old man did not look at Taiwu, but Taiwu felt his eyes more than once. Dong Yun knew that Taiwu had discovered the plot. He was probably wondering why Taiwu had not raised the alarm. Let him wonder, Taiwu thought. Let him be confused. Confusion makes people make mistakes. The feast began. Hundreds of dishes were brought out by an army of servants. Strange alien foods that Tai Wu had never seen before. Meat from creatures with too many legs. Fruit that glowed in the dark. Drinks that changed color as you watched them. The guests ate and laughed and talked loudly. The princess sat at the head table with the highest nobles around her. Tai Wu stood behind her chair, watching everything. The other guards stood along the walls, their faces blank and professional. Half of them were traitors. Tai Wu did not know which half. 1 hour passed. Then 2. The guests grew louder as they drank more. Some of them started to dance to the music. Others argued about politics and business. The princess smiled and nodded and played her part perfectly. Tai Wu felt the tension building in his chest. When would it happen? How would it happen? Every minute that passed made him more nervous. Then he saw it. A servant walked through the crowd carrying a tray of drinks. There was nothing special about him. He looked like any other servant in the palace. But Tai Wu noticed something wrong. The servant was walking toward the princess, but his eyes were not looking at her. They were looking at the guards along the wall. He was counting them, measuring distances, planning. Tai Wu moved closer to the princess. His hand went to the knife hidden under his coat. Another servant appeared on the other side of the room. Then another, and another. They moved through the crowd like shadows, getting closer and closer to the head table. 7 servants. 7 assassins. Tai Wu leaned down and whispered in the princess's ear. "They are here." The princess did not react. She simply raised her glass and took a small sip. "I know," she whispered back. "Wait for my signal." The assassins were getting closer. They had formed a circle around the head table, surrounding it from all sides. In a few moments, they would strike. They would pull out their hidden weapons and attack from every direction at once. The princess set down her glass and stood up. The room went quiet as everyone turned to look at her. "My honored guests," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I wish to make an announcement." The assassins stopped. They looked at each other, uncertain. This was not part of their plan. "Tonight we celebrate the coming of spring," the princess continued. "A time of new beginnings. A time of change." She paused, and her silver eyes swept across the room. "A time to cut away the dead branches and let new life grow." She turned and looked directly at Dong-Hyun. The old servant's face went pale. "Now," the princess said that it happened all at once. Hidden doors burst open along the walls. Soldiers in black armor poured into the great hall, weapons drawn. They surrounded the assassins before they could move. The guests screamed and pushed back from the tables, creating chaos, but the assassins were not finished. They had been trained for situations like this. One of them pulled a knife and threw it at the princess with deadly accuracy. Tai Wu moved without thinking. He threw himself in front of the princess as the knife flew toward her. The blade buried itself in his shoulder. Pain exploded through his body, but he did not fall. He pushed the princess down and covered her with his own body. More knives came. The assassins were fighting now, throwing their weapons as the soldiers closed in. Each blade was aimed at the princess. The second knife hit Tai Wu in the back. The third knife hit his side. The fourth knife hit his leg. He felt each one like fire, burning through his flesh. Blood soaked through his clothes. His vision began to blur, but he did not move. He held his position over the princess, protecting her with his own body. The fifth knife hit his arm. The sixth knife hit his other shoulder. Tai Wu could barely breathe. His body was screaming at him to stop, to give up, to fall down and accept defeat. He had never felt pain like this. It was beyond anything he had experienced before. But he thought of the princess beneath him. He thought of her trust in him. He thought of his promise to protect her. Humans did not give up. They never gave up. the seventh knife came. It was thrown by the last assassin just before the soldiers took him down. It spun through the air toward the princess's heart. Taiwu reached out with his bleeding arm and caught it. The blade cut deep into his palm, all the way to the bone. He felt the metal scrape against his flesh, but he held on. He stopped the knife inches from the princess's chest. Then, finally, it was over. The soldiers had captured all 7 assassins. Dongyun was on his knees in chains, his face showing nothing but shock. The traitor guards had been identified and arrested. The danger had passed. Taiwu slowly rolled off the princess. He lay on his back, staring up at the painted ceiling. Blood pooled around him on the white stone floor. He could count the wounds in his body. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 knives. 7 pieces of metal buried in his flesh. The princess appeared above him. Her face was pale and her eyes were wide with something that looked like fear. "Taiwu," she said. Her voice was shaking. "Taiwu, stay with me." He tried to speak, but no words came out. Everything was getting dark, cold. Help, darkness. That was all Taiwu knew at first. A deep, endless darkness that wrapped around him like cold water. He floated in it, unable to move, unable to think, unable to feel anything except the weight of nothing pressing down on him from all sides. Then came the pain dot. It started slowly, like a distant sound growing louder. First in his shoulder, then in his back, then everywhere at once. Pain so intense that it burned through the darkness like fire through paper. He wanted to scream, but he had no voice. He wanted to move, but he had no body. All he could do was suffer. Voices came and went in the darkness. Strange voices speaking words he did not understand. Sometimes he heard machines beeping. Sometimes he heard people crying. Sometimes he heard nothing at all. Time lost meaning. He did not know if hours were passing or days or weeks. He simply existed in the darkness, fighting against the pain, refusing to let go. And somewhere, deep inside his broken body, something burned. A tiny flame that would not go out. A spark of determination that had been passed down through generations of humans who had refused to die. When death came for them, Taiwu held on to that flame. He fed it with every ounce of strength he had left, and slowly, so slowly, the darkness began to lift. The first thing he saw was light. Soft golden light that hurt his eyes. He blinked and tried to focus. He was lying in a bed, but it was not his small bed in the servant quarters. This bed was large and soft, covered in silk sheets. The room around him was beautiful, filled with flowers and paintings and windows that showed a view of the 3 moons. He tried to move, and pain shot through his body. He gasped and fell back against the pillows. "Do not move." The voice came from beside him. He turned his head slowly and saw the princess sitting in a chair next to his bed. She looked tired. Her eyes were red and her hair was messy. She was wearing simple clothes instead of her usual elegant gowns. "Your Highness," Taiwu said. His voice came out as a rough whisper. His throat was dry and sore. "Do not speak either," the princess said. She stood up and poured water from a pitcher into a glass. She held it to his lips and helped him drink. The water was cool and sweet. "You almost died," she said quietly. "The healers said it was a miracle you survived. 7 wounds. Any one of them could have killed you. Together, they should have destroyed your body completely." Taiwu remembered the knives. He remembered throwing himself in front of the princess. He remembered the pain. "How long?" he asked. 12 days. "You have been unconscious for 12 days. The princess set down the glass and looked at him with those silver eyes. "I was beginning to think you would never wake up." "The assassins?" "Captured. All of them. Dongyun and the traitor guards have been executed. The conspiracy has been destroyed. The princess paused. You saved my life, Taiwu. You took 7 knives that were meant for me. Taiwu tried to sit up again, but the pain was too much. He fell back and closed his eyes. Rest now, the princess said. You are safe. No one will hurt you here. She reached out and gently touched his hand. Her fingers were cool against his hot skin. I will be here when you wake up, she said. I promise. Taiwu wanted to say something, but exhaustion pulled him down into sleep. The last thing he felt was the princess's hand holding his. He woke up many times over the following days. Sometimes the princess was there. Sometimes there were healers checking his wounds and changing his bandages. Sometimes he was alone. Each time, the pain was a little less. Each time, he could stay awake a little longer. On the 7th day after he woke up, Taiwu managed to sit up in bed by himself. It hurt more than anything he had ever experienced, but he did it. He looked down at his body and saw the bandages covering his wounds. 7 spots of white against his skin. The princess came in while he was sitting up. She stopped in the doorway and stared at him. What are you doing? She demanded. You should be lying down. I am tired of lying down, Taiwu said. His voice was stronger now. I need to move. You need to heal. I can do both. The princess looked at him with frustration, but also with something else. Something like admiration. You are the most stubborn person I have ever met, she said. I am human, Taiwu replied. We are all stubborn. The princess walked over and sat down in her usual chair. She had been sitting in that chair for weeks, watching over him, waiting for him to recover. Taiwu did not know why she had done this. Surely she had more important things to do than watch over a wounded human guard. Everyone in the palace is talking about you, she said. The nobles, the servants, the guards. They cannot believe what you did, what I did. You took 7 knife wounds for me, Taiwu. 7. Any Valoran warrior would have died after 3. The strongest soldiers in the empire could not have survived what you survived. But you, a human, stood against 7 blades and refused to fall. Taiwu did not know what to say. He had not thought about what he was doing when it happened. He had just acted. The princess needed protection, so he protected her. It was as simple as that. The healers have been studying your body, the princess continued. They want to understand how you survived. They say human biology is strange. Your bodies are weak, but they have an incredible ability to endure damage. Your hearts keep beating when they should stop. Your minds keep fighting when they should give up. We have no choice, Taiwu said. Humans have never been the strongest or the fastest or the most powerful. We have always been surrounded by predators and dangers that should have destroyed us. The only reason we survived was because we refused to die. The princess nodded slowly. I think I am beginning to understand humans now. Before you came, I thought your species was weak, insignificant, not worth attention. But I was wrong. She leaned forward and looked into his eyes. You are the strongest people I have ever seen, Taiwu. Not strong in body, but strong in spirit. Strong in will. Strong in the part of you that refuses to accept defeat. Taiwu felt something warm spread through his chest. It was not the warmth of pain or fever. It was something else. Something he had not felt in a long time. Thank you, Your Highness, he said quietly. The princess smiled. That real smile that she so rarely showed. You saved my life. I think we can stop with the formal titles when we are alone. Call me Yuna. Yuna, Taiwu said, testing the name. It felt strange on his tongue. Good strange. Now, Yuna said, standing up. The healers say you need to start moving to regain your strength. But slowly. Very slowly. If you push yourself too hard and tear your wounds open again, I will be very angry. Yes, you're high. Taiwu caught himself. Yes, Yuna. Over the following weeks, Taiwu recovered. It was a slow process, filled with pain and frustration. There were days when he could barely walk across the room. There were nights when the pain kept him awake until dawn. There were moments when he wanted to give up, to accept that his body would never be the same. But he did not give up. He never gave up. He trained every day, pushing himself a little further each time. He walked the halls of the palace, building up his strength step by step. He practiced with weapons, even though his arms trembled and his wounds ached. He forced his body to heal, to adapt, to become stronger. And through it all, Yuna was there. She visited him every day, sometimes for hours at a time. They talked about everything. Her life in the palace, his life on Earth, the differences between their worlds, the things they hoped for and feared. Taiwu learned that Yuna was lonely. She had grown up surrounded by servants and guards, but she had never had a true friend. Everyone around her wanted something from her. Power, influence, favors. No one simply wanted to know her as a person. Until Taiwu, he did not want anything from her. He had no interest in power or politics. He just wanted to protect her and now, to be her friend. It was simple and honest in a way that Yuna had never experienced before. You are changing things, you know? She told him one evening as they walked through the palace gardens. The 3 moons hung low in the sky, casting silver light over the flowers. The way people think about humans. The way they think about strength and weakness. I am just one person, Taiwu said. I cannot change an empire. You already have. Yuna stopped and turned to face him. Before you came, humans were nothing in the eyes of the Valoran people. Now, everyone knows the story of the human who took 7 knives for his princess. Everyone knows about the man who refused to die. They are saying that humans have something that other species do not. A fire inside them that cannot be put out. Taiwu thought about her words. He had never wanted to be special. He had never wanted to be a symbol. He had just wanted to do his duty. But maybe that was exactly what made humans special. They did not fight for glory or power. They fought because it was right. They fought because they had to. They fought because there was simply no other choice. The universe is going to have to get used to humans, Yuna said with a smile. I think you are going to be around for a very long time. Taiwu smiled back. His wounds still ached. His body was still healing. But he was alive. He had survived the impossible. And he had shown the entire Valoran Empire what a human could do. It was not about being strong or fast or powerful. It was about being stubborn. It was about refusing to accept defeat. It was about fighting with everything. 2 months had passed since the night of the banquet. Spring had turned to early summer, and the gardens of the palace were filled with flowers of every color. Life had returned to normal. The conspiracy had been destroyed, the traitors had been punished, and the empire was at peace. Taiwu's body had healed, though the scars remained. 7 marks on his flesh that would never fade. Sometimes when he looked at them in the mirror, he was amazed that he was still alive. But the scars did not bother him. They were proof of what he had done, proof of who he was. He had been given new quarters in the palace. Not the small room in the servant hallway, but a proper chamber near the royal apartments. It was bigger than his old home on Earth. He still was not used to it. His duties had changed as well. He was no longer just a guard. Yuna had made him her personal protector, her advisor, her friend. He attended her meetings and accompanied her on her travels. He stood beside her throne when she received visitors and walked beside her when she toured the empire. The other guards no longer mocked him. They nodded to him in the hallways with respect in their eyes. The servants smiled at him and called him by name. Even the nobles treated him differently. Where once they had looked through him as if he did not exist, Now, they acknowledged him with small bows and polite words. Everything had changed. And today, everything would change again. The emperor was dying. He had been sick for years, fading slowly like a candle burning down to nothing. The healers said he had only days left. When he died, Yuna would become empress. She would rule over an empire that stretched across 1,000 worlds. Taiwu found her in her private garden, sitting beside a fountain that sparkled in the morning light. She was staring at the water, lost in thought. When she heard him approach, she looked up and smiled. "I thought I would find you here," Taiwu said. "You always come here when you want to think." "My mother used to bring me here when I was young," Yuna said. "Before she died. She would tell me stories about our ancestors and teach me about the responsibilities of ruling. I always felt close to her here." Taiwu sat down beside her. They were comfortable with each other now, after months of friendship. They could sit in silence, and it did not feel awkward. "Are you ready?" he asked. "To become empress?" Yuna was quiet for a moment. Then she shook her head. "No, I do not think anyone is ever ready for something like this. But I will do it anyway. I have no choice." "You will be a good empress," Taiwu said. "The best this empire has ever seen." Yuna turned to look at him. Her silver eyes were soft. "You really believe that, do you not?" "I do." She reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were warm against his skin. "I am glad you came to Valora, Taiwu. I am glad you took this assignment that everyone told you to refuse. I am glad you stayed, even when everyone treated you badly. If you had not come, I would be dead now. And even if I had survived, I would still be alone." "You will never be alone," Taiwu said. "I promise." They sat together in the garden until a servant came to tell them that the emperor was asking for Yuna. She stood up slowly, taking a deep breath. "Will you come with me?" she asked, always. The emperor's chamber was dark and quiet. Heavy curtains blocked out the light and the air smelled like medicine and age. The old emperor lay in his bed, barely more than a shadow of the powerful ruler he had once been. His blue skin had faded to gray, and his wide eyes were clouded with sickness. Yuna knelt beside his bed and took his hand. Taiwu stood back, giving them privacy. "My daughter," the emperor said. His voice was weak, barely a whisper. "My beautiful daughter, I am proud of you." "So proud, Father," Yuna said. Tears were forming in her eyes. "I was wrong about humans," the emperor continued. He looked past Yuna to where Taiwu stood in the shadows. "I thought they were weak, insignificant. When they sent a human to guard you, I almost refused. I thought it was an insult." He paused to catch his breath. Each word seemed to cost him enormous effort. "But I was wrong. The human proved me wrong. He showed me that strength comes in many forms, that the heart is more important than the body, that true courage is not about being powerful, but about being willing to sacrifice everything for what matters." The emperor raised a trembling hand and pointed at Taiwu. "Come here, human." Taiwu walked forward and knelt beside the bed. The emperor looked at him with those clouded eyes. "You saved my daughter's life. You took wounds that would have killed any Valoran warrior. You showed my entire empire what humans are capable of." The emperor paused. "I cannot thank you enough, but I can give you this." He reached under his pillow and pulled out a small medallion on a golden chain. It was old and worn, but still beautiful. The symbol of the royal family was carved into its surface. "This belonged to my father," the emperor said, "and his father before him. It has been passed down through 20 generations of emperors. It marks the bearer as family, as one of us." He pressed the medallion into Taiwu's hand. "You are no longer a servant, human. You are no longer a guard. From this day forward, you are a member of the royal house of Valora. You are my daughter's protector, her guardian, her family. Do you accept this honor? Taiwu looked at the medallion in his hand. He looked at Yuna, who was watching him with tears streaming down her face. He looked at the dying emperor, who had given him the greatest gift anyone could give. I accept, he said. The emperor smiled. It was a small smile, barely visible on his worn face. But it was real. Good, he whispered. Good. He closed his eyes and squeezed Yuna's hand one last time. Rule well, my daughter. Be kind. Be just. Be strong. His voice grew even softer. I love you. And then he was gone. Yuna wept beside her father's body. Taiwu stood beside her, his hand on her shoulder, giving her what comfort he could. They stayed there for a long time, in the darkness and the silence, saying goodbye to an emperor and hello to a new age. 3 days later, the coronation was held. The great hall had been transformed. Black banners hung from the walls in memory of the dead emperor. White flowers covered every surface in celebration of the new empress. The crystal chandeliers had been lit with 1,000 candles, filling the room with golden light. Every important person in the empire had come. Nobles and generals, merchants and priests, ambassadors from 100 worlds. They filled the hall from wall to wall, dressed in their finest clothes and speaking in whispered voices. Taiwu stood at the back of the hall, watching. He wore a new uniform, white with gold edges, and around his neck hung the emperor's medallion. People pointed at him and whispered as they recognized him. The human. The one who took 7 knives. The one who was now family to the empress herself. A trumpet sounded, and the hall went silent. The great doors at the end of the room opened, and Yuna walked in. She was beautiful beyond words. She wore a gown of pure white that flowed behind her like liquid moonlight. A crown of silver and diamonds rested on her white hair. Her face was calm and strong, showing no fear, only determination. As she walked down the center of the hall, people bowed. First the servants, then the guards, then the merchants and priests. The nobles went next, lowering themselves in respect. Even the ambassadors from distant worlds bowed before her. Yuna walked through the sea of bowing figures, her head held high. She climbed the steps to the throne and turned to face her people. And then something happened that no one expected. Yuna looked across the hall, past all the nobles and generals and ambassadors, until her eyes found Taiwu standing at the back. She raised her hand and pointed at him. Come forward, she said. Her voice echoed through the silent hall. Every eye turned to Taiwu. He felt his heart racing as he walked forward through the crowd. People moved aside to let him pass, staring at him with wonder and confusion. He climbed the steps and stood beside Yuna in front of the throne. This man, Yuna said, her voice ringing out across the hall, is the reason I am standing here today. 2 months ago, assassins tried to kill me. 7 knives were thrown at my heart. And this human, this small creature from a distant world that most of you had never heard of, threw himself between me and death. He took every blade into his own body. He refused to fall. He refused to die. He saved my life. She turned to look at Taiwu, and her silver eyes were shining. My father gave him the imperial medallion before he died. He made this human a member of our royal family. But that is not enough. It will never be enough to repay what he has done. Yuna turned back to the crowd. From this day forward, Taiwu will stand beside me, not as a servant, not as a guard, but as my equal, as my partner, as the symbol of everything that makes humanity special. Their courage, their determination, their refusal to give up, no matter how impossible the odds. She raised her voice even higher. The universe has underestimated humans for too long. We have called them weak and insignificant. We have laughed at their short lives and soft bodies. But we were wrong. The strength of humans does not come from their flesh. It comes from their hearts. It comes from their will. It comes from something inside them that cannot be broken. Yuna reached out and took Taiwu's hand. She raised it high so everyone in the hall could see. This is what humanity looks like. This is what it means to be human. To face impossible odds and refuse to surrender. To take 7 knives and still stand. To sacrifice everything for what is right. She looked at the crowd with fire in her eyes.